in this paper, we were wondering what the word unexplored actually means in the context of natural history. And a bunch of our natural history students at Louisiana State University were interested in seeing places where perhaps natural historians had not previously been and done research and made collections. And our question shifted from what is unexplored to really what unexplored means. And our contention is that there are a lot fewer unexplored places and many biodiversity blind spots where people have made collections, but those aren't available or not publicly available and known from certain parts of the world.
We started off by just downloading all of the records for preserved specimens that are available on GBIF for terrestrial and freshwater plants, fungi, mammals, amphibians, reptiles, and birds. We cleaned up that data set just to make sure that we had good records to carry on and make maps for. And then we made maps that basically show how many, for each of those taxa, how many collections are made within 1 degree squared grid cells. And then we use what's called the Geddes-Ord statistic to identify significant collection hotspots and cold spots. And so that statistic basically tells you to what extent grid cells on the map are correlated with each other. And then we also looked at the total number of preserved specimens that are available on GBIF. And for each country that participates in the GBIF network, we looked at how many collections that were collected in those countries are housed at institutions in those countries versus collections that were made in that country but are housed in out-of-country institutions.
One of the things we encountered were a number of challenges. You can't really know what a museum has if they're not making it publicly available. But since all the authors are natural historians, we are in this network to better understand what's behind the scenes. And so we were able to glean a little bit about what may be hidden from public view just from knowing certain museums and collections.
One of the major findings that came out of this study is that for a lot of countries, it isn't really a question of whether they're unexplored or not, but really how many of those collections from those countries are digitized and also publicly accessible. And so from our perspective, it seems like those places are maybe undersampled or undercollected, but that simply might not be the case. And then another major result is that for a lot of countries that do have their data available on publicly accessible databases, specifically GBIF, a lot of those records that were or specimens that were collected in those countries are housed in out-of-country institutions and actually aren't housed at institutions in those countries.
I think everyone should be interested in this kind of research because it helps us better understand what is known about the world. I think lots of people misunderstand natural history and what natural historians do. But if you look at our data, you can see that there's lots of places in the world that still need a better understanding in terms of what natural history is going on there. What kind of animals are there? Are there new species? Have there been species described in the past that, we perhaps don't know enough about? And a lot of that can be seen, I think, in this paper, especially if we dig into those biodiversity blind spots.
Because we saw that for a lot of countries, a big proportion of the specimens that have been collected in those countries are housed at institutions in other countries. It would be really cool to see what the spatial patterns of those patterns look like. So, in other words, if you take all the plant specimens that have been collected in Colombia and are housed in Colombian institutions, and then you take the ones that are housed at non-Colombian institutions, I think it'd be really cool to see if those maps look different and if they tell different stories about where people are collecting.
I think this paper is really a call to action. It's a call to action for funding natural history so that more collections can be digitized, especially collections that are from the global south but housed in the West. And I also think it's a call to action to go to some of these places that are biodiversity blind spots. Let's see what local people know and have observed and what natural historians have done in the past and what we can do in the future to better understand this planet, this giant planet that still has a lot of things that we don't know about it, that nature has not revealed its secrets.